Hey guys, my name is Mike Olex. I'm the president for the Richmond Reason and Naturalism Association. I'm very excited tonight, though. We have Mr. Speckhardt here, though, from the American Humanist Association, and Rob's going to introduce as well the humanist group over at the UU Church. But just to kind of give you an introduction with RRNA, we do a lot of different things. We usually run the one topical meeting every month, but then also we'll have, for example, coming up here in June, we have a solstice picnic, and we try to do some more things for smaller, where we actually involve like kids and stuff like that, though, too, because I'm a father too, so as well. So, Rob, whenever you're ready, I'd like you to come up and introduce as well to your group, and then we'll introduce Mr. Speckhardt.
Thank you guys for coming out here tonight. I'm going to circulate a sign-up sheet for anybody that wants to get on the mailing list for RRNA, Richmond Humanist SavedByScience program that I do. There's one for American Atheist, Richard Dawkins Foundation. We're happy to add the AHA if you would like. The main way that we get in touch with people about programs is through those email and social media. So if you've already signed up for whatever you want, you don't need to sign up again. It's not like an attendance list. But if you want to get on those lists, please sign in. So we have a couple of programs coming up that I want to tell you about. On Sunday, May 1st, it's a week and a half from now, at First UU, Lawrence Krauss is going to join us by Skype for a question and answer session, probably about an hour and a half. He's the 2015 Humanist of the Year. And that's in addition to being a world-renowned theoretical physicist. He has the Origins Project out in Arizona. They look into the origins of life of the universe, life on Earth, consciousness, a lot of interesting things. The Sunday after that, Mark Reimers, who led the Humanist group for about 5 years here in Richmond, is coming back in town. So please come out and support him. As you know, he has a background in neuroscience, genomics, big data, statistics. And he's going to be talking about kind of what neuroscience means for humanism these days. And I guess with that, the last thing I'd say is we just had a program this past Sunday where we had Bill Torres and Donald Prothero kind of talking about what science denial and just a failure to appreciate what's really out there, what's looming on the horizon, how that's leading humanity toward oblivion. About the people that are really interested in risk and really study this say there's probably between a 25% and 50% chance of humanity going extinct over the next 100 years, which I think is very far outside what most people would just assume. If there's one thing we can do to combat that, I'd say it's what Roy is talking about tonight, is taking an intelligent approach, making change through humanism. So we're thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Just to give you an idea quick, too. So Mr. Speckhardt, he's served as the executive director for the American Humanist Association since 2005. He does a lot of different media commentary in terms of Good Morning America, CNN, Fox News, NPR, as well as others. And also he writes a regular article with the Huffington Post.
Thanks. Okay. So after working in the humanist movement for a decade or more, I really wanted humanism to mean something, something that everybody can understand. I wanted humanists to stand for something, something that would make a difference in people's lives. And I want the humanist movement itself to grow and have an increasing impact. So I wrote Creating Change Through Humanism, this book over here, with a description of humanism that I hope will spur some discussion and some debate, because humanism works through an ever-evolving process where we contribute to that process of what humanism means and grows and becomes over the years. Now, I'm going to move this a little closer to you all because I feel far away. There we go. It's not tied to a cord, so might as well. All right, that's a little bit. Okay. So the foreword of the book is written by Dr. Rebecca Neuberger Goldstein, who is a quite popular author and also a philosophy professor at Harvard University. She writes, "Until quite recently, I was unaware of the existence of the secular humanist community, organized around the values of rationality, free inquiry, and the right each of us has to flourish in this life, the only that we will ever get. Sadly, though, this is problematic. We have somebody like Dr. Goldstein swimming in the circles that she swims in, who didn't know about the secular humanist community until recently. So that was a concern of mine. She goes on to say, I'd internally severed all ties from the belief system into which I'd been born and indoctrinated, but dared not breathe a word of my internal dissent. I shied away from causing any discomfort to those closest to me, fearing the rejection of their beliefs would be felt as a rejection of them. And sadly, this too, I think, is problematic for us, because having to respond defensively to the all too common prejudice that exists against non-believers in our culture. We have to find ways to communicate our humanism better and clearer so that people can understand it. Several years, and I think this is possible, by the way. In fact, when I was down in Richmond and I spoke to one of the groups down here several years ago, I asked the audience, I polled the folks about how soon we might get same-sex marriage equality in every state of the union, including Virginia. And I said, well, in the next 10 years. And a couple people raised their hands. I said, well, maybe in the next 20 years. A couple more people raised their hands. Okay, maybe in the next 50 years. Well, most people raised their hands for that. But here we are, just about 10 years later, and we have marriage equality in every state. So it is possible to have change occur. Dr. Goldstein gives us some of the tools to proceed and overcome the challenges we face as non-theists. She says, if you believe in the integrity of your conclusions, you must show them to the world, making a case for them, not only in the arguments you hash out in the privacy of your own mind, but in the life that you publicly lead. Or as she quotes from later in the book, when you no longer need to feign an identity that isn't yours, you'll discover confidence in the ability to say, this is who I am, and speak out on any issue that stirs your heart and mind. By announcing your presence, others will come out to you that you didn't previously know shared your non-theism. You can love and be loved by the people who know the real you, and no matter what you've been told, that person deserves to see the light of day. So what does it mean to be a humanist? And I want this to be a little more of a conversation. So I'm going to ask for your thoughts. What are the key elements that are necessary for being a humanist? Any thoughts? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. All the way there.
Value of human values.
Human values.
Yeah.
Human-centered values.
Yeah.
Okay.
One way I think of it is that things that are traditionally, if you will, addressed by religion.
Things traditionally addressed by religion.
Is left up to humans.
Left to humans. Okay.
And also a biggie in my mind is that you do not need supernatural to construct morality.
You don't need supernatural to construct morality. Other thoughts? This side of the room? Yeah?
The first key is to actually
Be human. Got it. That's got to start somewhere. That's right. That's pretty straightforward. Did you have your hand? Oh, okay. No. One more?
I'm taking a proactive approach to treat as many humans ethically as possible, try to forge the best future for everyone.
Take a proactive approach to treat humans as ethically as possible. Any other elements are we missing here? Yeah.
Well, I have to say, you're looking for good and evil in the world. Humans are responsible for both without any reference.
If you're looking for good and evil in the world, humans are responsible for both without reference to supernatural. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Brings in a key element. All right. Well, humanism isn't a religion in the traditional sense, as there are no unchanging rules, no set of beliefs one must follow, no higher power one must give over to, no requirements to attend services or pray at bedtime. It's not a philosophy in the common sense, because it informs beyond the boundaries of the pursuit of knowledge into daily applications. It's not a political dogma, because it doesn't designate a specific platform of unchanging rules. Some call it a worldview or a life stance, because it's intended to address all the realms traditionally associated with philosophy, religion, and simply living a good life. Humanism is the not-so-radical idea that you can be good without a belief in a God. It's the discovery that you not only don't need outdated texts or God experts to make good choices, but in fact, those are frequently poor resources for decision making. The first pillar of humanism, which I think is, these pillars are kind of the necessary elements of what it takes to be humanist. The first pillar is the unflagging dedication to the scientific method as a source for knowledge that we rely on because experience has proven it reliable. Science isn't just something that PhDs do in lab coats in some ivory tower institution, but it's what we do every day. You know, when a kid in their high chair takes some food off and throws it on the ground to see what happens, that's science. Everything we do in terms of learning and experiencing the world around us and making conclusions based on that is part of the scientific process of obtaining knowledge. So, believing that the world is derived through observation, experimentation, rational analysis, rules out other possible conclusions. And because of this, humanists reject supernatural sources, unexamined dogma, simplistic concepts of good and evil, and humanists don't simply disbelieve religious explanations as if, you know, it's religious so we disbelieve it automatically. No. Rather, we just find that those explanations don't stand up to reasonable scientific scrutiny. Another pillar of humanism is empathy, which links science with what distinguishes humanism as a positive philosophy. Empathy is the capacity to share feelings experienced by others. In 1933, Albert Einstein wrote, "There's one thing we know. We are here for the sake of others. Above all, for those whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends, and also for the countless unknown souls whose fate we are connected by a bond of sympathy." We all need a certain amount of empathy in order to have compassion for others and to understand that we're all humans, as was pointed out earlier. By walking in another's shoes, by stepping outside our preconceptions, our impersonal limitations, we can see things from another's viewpoint, which gives us insights into perspectives other than our own. We learn what it feels like to experience realities we haven't even faced. It gives us a chance, if we trust what we're hearing, to learn from trial and error without experiencing the trial. That's a tremendous advantage. And the more we cultivate it, the more we benefit personally and as a society. It's through the cultivation of this empathy that we develop a deep-seated compassion for humankind and the world at large. Empathy and compassion helped us to advance as a species back in the early parts of that time. It was survival for those who would look out for each other. And we do well to remember that on a global scale as we confront challenges to our very existence. But such a commitment to empathy and the compassion that flows from it may only have a modest impact on our positions if it wasn't for the third pillar, which is the accompanying commitment to an egalitarian-based sense of fairness. This compassion without egalitarianism would be hollow. It would be reminiscent, if you think about it, as a thought experiment, of the compassion of ancient Hindu societies, which undid their interest in compassion by stratifying the society into castes that allowed many to be considered less than human. Similarly, pre-Civil War Christian leaders urged slave owners to be kind to their slaves, but such compassion is worthless in the confines of slavery. And when conservative Christians and Muslims say, the husband should be the head of the household, but use his power kindly, they fool themselves to think this is meaningful compassion, because it's not. The principle of egalitarianism is the conviction that humans are basically equal, despite possible differences in aptitude, and each person should be treated as having inherent worth. Given that humanist reasoning, there's plenty of room for differing outcomes based on inherent intellect, ability, or hard work, but acceptance of inequality between ethnic, cultural, or other groups as a grounds for discrimination is insupportable by humanist reasoning. This leads us to the conclusion that we live on this one world as one people. Politically, it discourages chauvinistic nationalism. It supports international cooperation. So you ready for another question? Is science compatible with traditional religion? I want to hear your thoughts on that. Can science and religion, are those compatible today? What are your thoughts? Yes? I see some shaking heads. Want to elaborate on that?
I would say no, but a lot of people say yes.
You'd say no, but a lot of people say yes. Why do you say no?
Well, the main reason is that, first of all, religion is not based on evidence.
Religion isn't based on evidence, and science is. So yeah, that makes them very different as far as where they're coming from in knowledge. Other thoughts?
Religion is not only not based on evidence, it very often chooses to ignore it.
Not only is religion not based on evidence, but it often ignores it. That's right. That's right. All the way over here.
Just another way of saying the same thing. It is based on faith rather than reason and evidence.
Based on faith versus reason and evidence. Any other thoughts?
Religion, saying properly understood, is not why things are the way they are, as science investigates, but what things mean.
So religion is not about
meaning.
why things are the way they are, but
Science is about why things are.
science is about why things are. Religion is about how they mean. Interesting. Yeah. Others. Both are about evidence in one way or another, just different kinds. That's an interesting point. Yeah. And the back here.
Excuse me. Science asks the question and looks for the answer. Religion thinks they have the answer and leaves the science first.
Right. Okay. So religion seeks to have the answers first and then come up with the reasoning second. Yeah. Over here.
I think one of the things that would keep humanists humble is that science changes.
Science
And what
changes, which keeps
We're
humanists
convinced
humble.
that science says this. Down the line, it changes its mind as new evidence comes in.
That's right. That's right. No, I think as
Which is
unity.
unlike religion,
Yeah.
now that I think of it.
No, that's- both answer questions people have. Yeah. Well, as Unitarian Universalist Association President Peter Morales wrote in a journal article, science is based on a radically democratic way of knowing, in the sense that scientific truth is comprised of the things we all experience, not private experience, accessible only to gifted individuals. Morales accurately points out science is a process for obtaining information, and that where any person has a chance to change everyone else's minds, if they can prove their point. There's no faith required to accept what we've learned from science as being the best answers currently available. Or, as Neil deGrasse Tyson simply says, science is true whether you believe in it or not. The reliance on science as a process isn't really radical at all, if you think about it. What would be radical would be accepting knowledge obtained any other way. Unfortunately, in the same article, Peter Morales, I think, makes the mistake of trying to carve out part of our world and suggest it's somehow outside of the laws that explain everything else. He writes, and here we get to this point raised here, questions of meaning, he says, are not scientific questions, and goes on to relegate such questions to the realm of religion as if untouched by science. But this tendency to create a safe space for religion, tucked away from the rigors of science, I think is a little bit so to avoid it being disproved. It's at least an oversight, I think. We can and do use the same scientifically rigorous approaches of observation, analysis, trial and error, and conclusion when approaching questions of meaning and purpose for ourselves and for others. For some, the path to humanism itself is trial and error. Comedian George Carlin said, "I've begun worshiping the sun for a number of reasons. First of all, unlike some other gods I can mention, I can see the sun. It's there for me every day. And the things it brings me are quite apparent all the time. Heat, light, food, and a lovely day. There's no mystery. No one asks for money. I don't have to dress up. And interestingly enough, I've found that the prayers that I offer the sun and the prayers I formerly offered to God are all answered at the same 50-50 rate." So, All this considered, the break with theism is sometimes a challenging one for people. We should give people experiencing this struggle a chance to explore and decide for themselves, not rush them to some particular conclusion. There are even millions of Americans who retain labels from traditional faith traditions such as Catholic, Jewish, or Buddhist, but don't believe in an intervening God. As first revealed in a survey done by Pew back in 2009, some of you may be familiar with their Pew surveys on the religious landscape surveys they've done. But just in 2009, they tied the question of belief and identity together. For some reason, they didn't repeat that after. But it was interesting what they found. So where do you think you could find the most humanists and atheists and folks like that? In what religious category might you find them? Any guess?
Secular Jews.
Secular Jews, that's a good guess. Over here?
That was actually the same guess.
Others? Other guess? Unitarian Universalists? Yeah, I thought it might be Unitarian Universalists myself. But it turns out it's the Catholic Church. Because the 1.5% of Catholics who are certain there is no God, because of the volume of Catholics in the United States, we're talking about 500,000, 700,000 Catholics, whereas the entire Unitarian Universalist Association membership is under 400,000. And while the number of Jews who subscribe to humanistic views are certainly high, only 25% of Jews believe in a personal intervening God in the United States. And that's, so it's certainly by percentage, it's Jews. But by number, it's Catholics. The interesting thing is that not only is there this group of Catholics that are certain there is no God, but there is a group of Catholics that rates 29% that sees God as an impersonal force. Kind of the same way to look at it as Bernie Sanders does. You know, he says, oh, I believe in God, I'm a spiritual person. Well, what do you mean by that, Bernie? Oh, well, you know, we're all connected together. You know, we're all trying to do good for each other. Well, okay. But if that kind of is your belief in God, well, then you fit fine in humanist circles like this one, I suppose. Which gets me to another point, you know. How do we limit ourselves? You know, is everybody truly welcome here? Yes? Maybe? Everyone's truly welcome? It's hard to say. Would they be welcome into leadership? You know, how do you determine whether somebody is right for this group and maybe could be a leader in the future? You know, will our next leader be, somebody like, my mind's blanking.
Rafael Cruz.
Rafael Cruz would be a good example, yeah, sure. You know, would he be somebody this group would welcome as a future leader? I don't think so. But what is it about him that makes us not want him to lead us? So many things. Right. But I think that when you get down to it, it is a little bit complex. You know, is it just the fact that he's such a ardent believer? Maybe not just that. I mean, what about Karl Rove? He's an atheist. Would we want him leading up the group? Is his values represent ours? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. So I think it's good to think about how identity and belief are pieces of this puzzle, but there's also a lot of values that matter to it too. So, part of deciding whether you're in the right place is hearing about the journeys people took to get there. While an increasing number of people are being raised in secular fashion as humanists, such folks still represent a minority of active humanists today. How many people here were raised in secular households? Just a couple? A few? No, not too many. Quite a few, actually. What do I mean by secular households? Yeah, you kind of have to define it for yourself, but, you know, I was raised Catholic, for instance. A pretty liberal Catholic home in New York, but Catholic just the same. And so I wouldn't count. But if you were raised in a UU household and weren't taught that you had to believe a specific thing, that would probably count. If you were trying to look for it. Any, by the way, while I'm at it, any here raised in fundamentalist or evangelical backgrounds? A couple? Yeah. Yeah, that's a big transition. In fact, to give an example of one of our board members of the American Humanist Association, Dr. Anthony Pinn, is the leading scholar on African American humanism in the US today. His transformation was more dramatic than my mild one from liberal Catholicism. Tony was raised in a profoundly religious environment in Buffalo, New York, with his devout mother providing the biggest early influence and the local minister tapping him for a career in the pulpit. Tony became a rising star in his local African Methodist Episcopal Church, preaching his first sermon by the age of 12 and becoming ordained in the evangelical ministry by 18. Humanism wasn't an available option for him in the circles he found himself in. In fact, his religion was a speaking in tongues kind of faith, where one is expected to be regularly moved by a direct connection to the Holy Spirit in a God-fearing way. With Christian life permeating much of his experience and himself on the doorstep to a distinction in the church, his intellectual curiosity had to be remarkably strong for him to walk down roads that led to atheism and humanism, such as probably some of you who were raised in evangelical backgrounds. It was for him, though. At New York's Columbia University, he began to kind of modify his faith, gradually away from the literal Bible and evangelical positions of revealed truth. He realized the worlds of academia and the church, for him, were less and less compatible. Well, such seeds of doubt were firmly planted, but it took attending Harvard Divinity School to make Tony an atheist and a humanist. His atheism spoke to what he no longer believed. His humanism spoke to what he did believe regarding reason, compassion, and equality. I have a question for you, another question. So, many humanists in their life experience periods where they feel countering the harm of religion is their best overall emphasis. Is this okay? So, is critiquing religion and making that your focus, is that okay?
Necessary but not sufficient.
Necessary but not sufficient. That's a good way to put it. Other thoughts?
An early stage.
It's an early stage. Tell me a little more.
It's a scientific process. You try out, you contrast what you were taught and you're supposed to believe versus what your experience tells you.
Right, contrasting what you're taught with what experience is showing you. Yes?
Probably depends how broadly you define the harm of religion. If you extend it into politics, not address the climate stage.
That's fair. Yeah, if you extend the harm of religion into its impact on politics today, countering that can be a life sport for sure. Yeah. Over here?
Well, it's actually a pity that we have to criticize religion because we don't criticize Santa Claus, right?
We don't criticize Santa Claus, so why bother criticizing religion? Yeah. That's an interesting point. All the way in the corner? Santa Claus doesn't govern politics. Yeah, most of them, at least. maybe you're just on December 23rd or something. Yes?
Santa Claus also doesn't, insist on creationism in textbooks and things like that.
Yeah, insisting on creationism in textbooks. These kind of political facts, I think, are a good point as to why it's necessary to speak up. I mean, I think that a consistently negative approach is unhealthy and less productive. It's not part of a whole person, as Clem mentioned in the beginning here. But if we don't ever see anything to criticize in traditional religion, we're probably not paying attention because there's stuff to criticize out there. In Sam Harris's letter to a Christian nation, he uncovered a dangerous weapon the religious right had been wielding against both the religious and the secular left for years. By convincing mainstream people of faith, and even many secularists, that critique of religion was inherently wrong, the religious extremists in our midst got a free pass to hate whoever they wish, discriminate as they like, and seek laws that trample the rights of others, all free from criticism. For if it's a taboo to criticize religion and politics, and just impolite to do it in circles where you don't have a problem debating other issues, then such anti-humanist ideas and behavior can go unchecked. We need to find a balance, I think, that allows us to critique bad ideas, but maintains a respect for the people who deserve our respect. The balance should recognize that humanism really is a more positive than a negative way of looking at life. So will people sometimes take offense at our good without God statement? I don't know if you see that out there, but good without a God is the motto of the American Humanist Association. But Will some people take offense at that?
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of people know that's true. I bet in this town that would be the case. If you had that on your car, people might take offense. But why do you think that is? Any thoughts? What makes it so offensive? If you have no belief in a God, you have no morality. Yeah, I constantly get asked that question by reporters, how is it that you can be good and a humanist at the same time? That seems problematic to me. I think foundationally, fundamentalists believe that all goodness derives from their God. So the presence of anybody being good without a God is a constant reminder that something is wrong with their belief on the source of goodness. They fumble for other possibilities, like the improbable idea that all atheists are bad, or the absurd conclusion that atheists don't even exist, and that instead, we atheists have somehow deluded ourselves into thinking we're atheists. You'd be surprised how often that happens, that people think that. It makes no sense. That's why fundamentalists, I think, react with such extreme aversion to the good without a God motto. This is really a personal statement that we're making, but it's seen to them as an attack on their core beliefs. So it's interesting to see how that plays out. But I think it's important for us to get the word out about how we feel, regardless of whether it causes offense or not. Because whether our very existence causes offense to people shouldn't mean that we can't exist and can't be who we are and can't speak out about what we care about. So, I think today we face a threat from religious right. It continues to gain supporters in federal and state government levels, advancing extreme sectarian conservative agendas, working publicly and behind the scenes to appoint far-right judges, something we're going to see a lot more of in the debate for the Supreme Court. They also push regressive legislation and espouse their narrow views to the public. The danger of this embrace, especially the government's embrace of religious ideas, is that it inhibits academic freedom, compromises civil liberties, and tears down the wall of separation between religion and government. A new embrace of humanistic reason is needed to hold back this assault on our protections and prevent us from going down a path toward theocratic despotism. Humanism provides a philosophical foundation. While it may not be dogmatic with unchangeable rules, there's a general consensus among humanists about our approach to issues. Without cataloging them, I'll say some of them, it frames the debate by highlighting the importance of human progress, human dignity, equality, global responsibility, civil liberties, secular society, the environment, and a commitment to science over blind faith and pseudoscience. While humanists' positions aren't dogmatic, they're by no means apolitical. They exhibit a tendency toward liberalism. But, ready for the next question? Can you be a humanist and a conservative at the same time? Yes. Okay. Would you elaborate?
Actually, I just read David Silverman's book.
Read Dave Silverman's book.
Creating God. He talks about that in there. A lot of atheists who are conservative.
There are a lot of conservative atheists.
Conservative in terms of government, whatever, not conservative in terms of there's just us and there's a special group.
I see.
So he's saying yes, you can be a conservative, they're not mutually exclusive.
I see. Anyone else? Yeah.
In Dave Silverman's book, he's talking specifically about atheists as opposed to humanists.
Atheists as opposed to humanists, which is a little bit of a different flavor, right?
I think for this, it depends how you define conservative.
How you define conservative?
Like a radical, not really conservative.
Uh-huh.
So I think all in the definition.
All in the definition. Over here.
I just want to give an example. In my family, for example, my father, he is a fiscal conservative but social liberal.
Fiscal conservative but social liberal.
And
These happen.
I consider myself to be basically fiscally conservative and socially liberal as well too. So I think it's, but I think it also relates. Like, I mean, he would define himself as Republican and whatever else, but at the same time.
And we have some Republican members.
Anyway.
I tell reporters they'd be surprised to find out that we only have about 48% of our members are Democrats. And they're like, oh, I can't believe you're so evenly split. Well, I say, well, we only have 3% Republicans. The rest are independents or Greens or other things. Yes?
Well,
was a libertarian.
Libertarians, right? Yep, libertarians can be humanistic in their views, absolutely. So I think there are some examples out there. I think that it's possible to hold conservative views about one of a number of issues, especially when competing values are at stake. So something I've been interested in this question a bit, so I've been exploring it. I know some dedicated humanists, for instance, who emphasize the value of liberty a little more than anti-violence measures when they express their strong support for maintaining the ability to buy, own, and carry guns. But those same folks, if they're humanists, tend not to be extreme in their view. They're willing to accept waiting periods for gun purchases, mandatory registrations, or limitations on the right to carry in certain places in order to accommodate their interest in liberty, but not accidentally facilitate violence. Similarly, I know humanists who believe in the freedom of die can be precarious in its application, the right to die, endangering those who are going through mentally difficult times, exposing infirm people to the risk of manipulation. But such individuals, again, if they're humanists, also tend to see their position in moderation, frequently agreeing with Oregon's death with dignity law that includes safeguards confining the use to terminally ill patients with doctor-certified control of their mental capacities. In general, I find that humanists who describe themselves as conservative, aren't quite anywhere near as conservative as the folks that I deal with on Capitol Hill, either the representatives or the folks that work for them on the conservative side. But it's not automatically inconsistent with humanism to reach the rational conclusion that local government might be preferable to federal government, or the private sector can do some things better than the public sector, or that we shouldn't burden our grandchildren with debt. If folks arrive at traditionally conservative positions through reason, compassion, rather than dogma or selfishness, not only are they still humanists, but they may have discovered things that have eluded others. Regardless of our individual differences, though, humanists of all stripes recognize that we need to work together in order to make things better, because no deity is going to do it for us. While we humanists don't agree amongst ourselves on everything, we may even change our minds from time to time, we have the insight to see that this can be our strength, not a weakness. We know we need to work together because a form of religious fundamentalism is gaining ground across this country that's anti-secular and political. It's a danger to the democracy and values we humanists hold dear. So in conclusion, I know most of you care deeply about the environment, choice, education, and a myriad of other causes. But you made the time to be here. Humanism is what unites us. Let's emphasize that humanism like never before and create the change we'd like to see. Thank you. I'll be happy to take some Q&A before I do a little book signing. I have some books. There's for sale for $15, and I can take credit card or cash, or checks, I guess. But anyway, questions before we do that?
Are you familiar with Peter Boghossian's Manual for Creating Atheists and the idea of street epistemology?
Peter Boghossian's work, I've seen some of his work, but I haven't explored it that deeply.
So the idea, so I'm just curious if this would apply well to humanism. The idea of street epistemology is for atheists, to be able to engage somebody with very differing views in sort of a friendly conversation,
right,
to nudge them along this path of doxastic openness, to get them to sort of listen to you and keep asking them why they sort of feel certain ways. And I didn't know if that would be a good approach for humanism when people don't know what it is or have this negative reaction to it, to clarify why they believe, what they think is wrong.
Yeah, kind of thinking about what you believe, I think, is actually also a good path toward humanism. So I know my partner, Maggie Oriente, who wasn't able to join me today, that's what did it for her. She had, was participated in IB classes in Virginia Beach, where they had a theory of knowledge class saying, how do you know what you know? And drilling down into that question. And of course, when you think about it enough, you realize, well, maybe the things that I thought I knew, I didn't. So I think that is definitely a way to bring people toward a path of reason, for sure.
It's sort of the opposite of a debate, and it tries to
right.
them
It's
to
not a
discover
debate
for themselves.
Yep. yeah, offer it up as a way people can explore on their own. Yeah. Other questions folks have?
You mentioned something real briefly, but
Okay.
it's one of the principles of UU Church, and that is that the belief in the inherent value, inherent worth, dignity, value, something like that, of every human being.
Yeah. Inherent worth and value of every human. Yeah.
Right. I personally don't necessarily believe in that. I mean, I think everybody might be born with it, but I think people do things sometimes that sort of sacrifices it. They give it up.
Do some people give up that right?
I'm thinking
It's an interesting
mainly
way of thinking.
about violent criminals and things, people who have done just heinous things to society or to individuals, what have you. How do you think, in just your opinion, I realize, but how do you think humanism would address my point of view?
Well, I think that humanists tend to believe that people are redeemable or in a psychological state that they need care, not always punishment. Doesn't mean that there's no justice in humanism, or that people who are humanists don't value the decisions by judges to make those penalties for crimes. I think that there is a larger discussion about how that works and how it's connected to free will. Do we experience the ability to decide for ourselves what we do? We think we do, right? There's this appearance that we do. But if we are a result of our biology and every experience that we've had up until this moment, which we are, there's nothing outside of that that could possibly be influencing us, then how is it that we are an actor deciding what to do next? And really, it's just a natural result of everything that's happened up to this moment in our lives and our biology. Kind of getting into that free will conversation is a little mind-blowing, but I think that the answer, from my personal take, is that we have to create laws as if there was such a thing as free will, because otherwise the punishments and incentives to do good wouldn't exist in society, and we'd be more likely to go down some negative paths. But that's just my view. Yeah, around the corner.
I may be misstating it, but I would like to think that part of being a humanist regarding laws being broken and evil behavior and so forth can more easily be understood by a humanist as maybe something sometimes done by someone who is damaged.
Right,
who has been, not because of some choice they made, but something that was done to them. I mean, how many people grow up in neighborhoods where there's nothing but violence and
That's right.
not enough food, not
It's a
enough
great
food.
example. Absolutely. No, you're right. I mean, when we are pushed in our lives to do something negative, I mean, it didn't happen out of nowhere. Either we have chemical or mental break, or we've been dealt with a load of troubles that have caused us to act inappropriately. I mean, it's usually not, it's not a desire to do evil. That's really rare.
I think there's a collision there in that thought process.
A collision?
To be an atheist, humanist, to think and to accept reality outside of the social norm, you have to accept the responsibility, accept the fact that we are each individually responsible for our actions. We are the direct result of our choices.
We are the result of our choices, so we have a responsibility for our actions.
Whether we are part of the English community or the names.
I actually agree with that.
There's, as you said, there's an excuse and there's a reason.
Yeah, right. An excuse and a reason.
They are two very different things.
They are different things. Yeah, sometimes I've seen, and we've had articles in our Humanist magazine about this. Some folks have advocated that punishment of any kind is problematic because of this fact that you are a result of what has led before, and you can't stop but do what you've done. But that takes away personal responsibility. And I think if you take away personal responsibility, one of the things you have to look at, I think as a humanist, we look at the world in consequential terms. What are the consequences of creating laws and living in a society where we take away personal responsibility altogether? It's not going to be good. I mean, it's a thought experiment because we don't see too many societies do that kind of thing, but it's not a good way to go for society. Generally, you need some boundaries.
But in our society, we do that sometimes in our prisons, and there's a lot of psychological research that shows that punishment, somehow we have this sort of intuitive idea that if you punish somebody for something, they'll stop doing it.
Right, yeah, punishment doesn't often work. It doesn't always stop people from doing things. The science shows that. So again, but that goes right to the point about looking at the consequences. You know, does saying that you can experience a penalty if you steal something stop some people from stealing? Yeah, it does. Does saying that there's a death penalty mean that somebody's going to be less likely to kill people? Well, the studies have shown not really. You know, they're knowing that there's some punishment out there might slow some people down, but often it's interesting to look at the studies around these, and there's tons of them. You know, we could be talking about this for a long time, but it is fascinating to look at, because I think the general gist of it is that we overpunish right now, but that doesn't mean that zero punishment is also a good idea. There's just like almost everything we discuss, there's a balance. There's limits are important, but there's a balance that we have to try to achieve.
I'm having a lot of problems because I'm an anthropologist.
You're an anthropologist, right?
What I'm having is that for me, humans are all in the world, and much of what we're talking about is dependent upon.
Could you give her the microphone?
Yeah, trouble is I'm a former professor, so don't let me go on too long. But
that's why I usually don't give it up.
I'm just saying that I'm an anthropologist. In Spanish we say, I am walking on 87. I am actually 86 the time here, but in other cultures I can say that I'm walking on 87. And I've been working with people, humans, all over the world. Mostly they have different cultures than any of us have. I have worked with Africans, both in Africa and in the Caribbean, with Spanish Americans in Mexico, in China, with all kinds of people with whom was introduced. I have worked, as I say, with so many people that have no conception of anything we're talking about here at all. And, you know, so what's a humanist if you come from a small village in the middle of Africa?
Well, I think that a humanist, you know, you don't have to identify as a humanist to be a humanist. You know, Neil deGrasse Tyson is somebody who, you know, skews all labels. Doesn't like people calling him atheist or a humanist or anything. And in fact, he'll go on his Wikipedia page and change it, and like 5 minutes later, somebody will put something new there, and he'll change it back. But and I don't blame him, because one of the things with labels is that people have this idea about you based on that label. You know, I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, I'm a free thinker, I'm a skeptic, I'm an agnostic, I'm all those things actually, and I think they're completely compatible. But I think about what word I use in different circles. In circles of the general public, I rarely use the word atheist, because a lot of people in the general public think atheism means that I'm against religion, that's my mission, against religion. It's not my mission. And so I don't want to confuse people about that. And so I say I'm a humanist, and if they question me and get down to it, you know, I'm a non-theist. Yes, I'm a non-theist. What is the difference definitionally between non-theist and atheist? Nothing. They mean the same exact thing. But if I say that, people understand it better sometimes. But so it's interesting, I think, that exists. But to get to your question, you know, how do people exist, you know, in places where this concept and this way of thinking isn't really part of the natural course of discussion? I think they can be humanists without knowing it. You know, that they act on humanist values, whether they know it or not. Right. It's human beings that are behind what is good or bad. Right, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so people are humanists all over. You don't need special knowledge to be a humanist.
And the things they don't understand because they haven't the same education nor the same culture that we have. How are you going to explain to somebody that has never known about electricity? All you have to do is
Right, right.
That's scary.
Yeah.
And they have other explanations.
I bet.
But they will understand if they live in a culture that, and we have to more and more as we pay attention. This is a globalizing world.
It's a globalizing world. We have to find ways to make humanism relevant for people wherever they are. Definitely.
And we're moving elsewhere,
Uh-huh.
and to not understand the importance of whatever beliefs they have is
Right.
dangerous for them and for us.
Right, right. Over here, you have a question? Well, I can repeat it if it's a question.
No, yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. You know, we have to ask ourselves, why would we even bother to fight religion? You know?
Why bother fight religion?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's always these discussions whether, you know, religion does more good or not evil in the world, and we have these public debates about this question. I'm wondering myself, has anybody ever tried to quantify this, in terms of, like, do we have numbers of how many people kill each other?
Right. How many people kill each other for what causes? Very few people kill each other in the name of atheism or humanism, that's for sure.
On the other hand, we would argue that, or we would agree that most religious people are perfectly fine people, right? So why would we even try to convince them that there is no
Right. Why would we convince them that there's no God? Why would we challenge religion? Well, one thing, a Nobel laureate, Humanist of the Year, Stephen Weinberg, I think. Weinstein, I think. Yeah.
Stephen Weinberg?
No, Weinberg. Yeah, I was right the first time. Thank you for helping me remember. Yeah, he says that in order for bad people to do bad, you don't need religion. But in order for good people to do bad, you do need religion. Basically, paraphrasing. Yeah.
I just want to comment on that last thing. People wouldn't say that Christianity went and killed up to 500,000 Iraqis, but George Bush did what he did in large part because of his whole religious shaping. So a lot of things that don't get attributed to religion, if you dig back deeper,
right.
A lot of them do have religion.
A lot of people use religion as a justification for the many things they do. And whether that's truly their justification, whether George Bush, for instance, really went to war because of his faith, or whether he just used it as an excuse to go to war, one way or another, that happened. He says that he was basically told by God to invade. I mean, he said that when he was in Saudi Arabia giving a talk. So, over here.
Talking about, should we be fighting religion? I like the idea that was, I think, at the center of something you were involved in October, the Common Ground at Rutgers.
So we did a Common Ground conference in October, bringing together interfaith and atheist and humanist folks together, leaders for a discussion in New Jersey. Yeah.
And the video of that whole weekend is free. It's online. If you just search Common Ground 2015,
you can get it at Common Ground 2015 online.
It's a series of videos of each panel discussion and so forth, and I think you were on a couple of them, but I found that to be a model of something that I cannot forget.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of not, putting the idea of fighting aside and saying, okay, I'm an atheist or humanist or a rationalist or whatever, and you're a believer, you're a believer in the supernatural God, but let's talk about what we have in common, let's try and make something good in spite of our differences.
Right. I'm going to wrap up a little bit, and then, yeah, absolutely true. So we have to find ways to work together with others, because no matter how we look at how big our group is getting, 30% of incoming first-year students in college are nuns, N-O-N-E-S's. They don't have any religious adherence to a particular identity. Yeah, we're growing fast, no doubt about it, but we're still a minority. We're still not going to be able to get a majority vote on anything unless we ally with others. So we have to find ways that we can ally with progressive people of faith on issues that matter to us, or we're not going to get anywhere. And but we have to do that in a way where they recognize us as full participants and as who we are. We don't have to leave our identity behind us in order to enter into those interfaithly conversations. And even we don't follow faith. So some of us, the idea of being in an interfaith circle is problematic right there because we don't have faith in the way they do. So this is something that I think we have to struggle with in the coming years, ways to balance that issue, how we can participate, get things done as humanists. And that's necessary if we want to do good in this world. That's part of creating change. So thank you very much.